Hey folks, this is Pastor Carl Gallups. Most of the listeners to my weekly radio program, Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, they know this story, this account, but it serves as a teachable moment and a first-hand demonstration of the fake news media that now dominates the American cultural information delivery system. In a nutshell, here's my story. When Donald Trump was facing the Florida primaries in 2016 to determine who would be on the general election ballot, the mainstream media became very anxious about that because, see, they knew that if Trump won Florida, he would have a good chance of being the Republican candidate for president and perhaps even winning the presidency. So one of their tactics was to go to Donald Trump's website and see who had endorsed him, somebody that might help him sway the state of Florida. Well, my name was on Donald Trump's website. It was there because I had been asked by the Trump campaign to open a rally for him in Pensacola, Florida in January of 2016. That Florida rally was standing room only, with thousands outside the Civic Center arena that could not get in. And the arena was packed to capacity with estimates of over 12,000 people inside. Shortly thereafter, I officially endorsed Donald Trump, beginning with an article requested by the Associated Press. When that initial story was released, which in my estimation was a fairly accurate story, but other mainstream media picked up the AP story and gave it a headline that read something like this: Florida pastor supporting Trump is a Sandy Hook denier. He believes no one died at Sandy Hook. Well, there are two problems with that headline. Number one, I have never taken that position on Sandy Hook, anywhere or at any time. And Sandy Hook never came up in any interview with the mainstream media, by the way. So what they did was to go to my radio program archives and pull out a show wherein I did have a guest one day on my show who does believe that no one died at Sandy Hook, as do millions of Americans apparently. I never stated anywhere in the interview that I agreed with the guest's position that no one died at Sandy Hook. I let him have his say. I have on several occasions stated that I do not believe the entire government narrative and the mainstream media reports about Sandy Hook, however. I spent 10 years in Florida law enforcement in my past. And during some of those years, I even conducted my own criminal investigations. You see, there were just too many unanswered questions about the entire Sandy Hook affair for me to wholesale believe everything the Obama administration and the sycophant media in that day was spewing out about Sandy Hook. Now we know how right I was to distrust that administration and the mainstream media on practically everything. But the fact remains, no one will ever be able to find a single thing in writing or in video or in audio wherein I ever stated that I do not believe anyone died at Sandy Hook. Nor will anyone ever find a single person who has ever heard me even hint such a thing. I've been the pastor of one church for decades. I've been on radio and TV, nationally and internationally, for years. There's not one piece of film or any other archived evidence wherein I ever made such a statement. Of course, the fake news didn't care about those facts. They only desired to assassinate my character and integrity in order to make Donald Trump look bad, hoping to sway the Florida primaries against him because of my endorsement. So they made up the headlines. In other words, they lied. And they went with the story internationally. The stories, of course, are still all over the internet. Some of them even have a portion of that particular radio show embedded in their stories as, quote, proof. They know, of course, that most people will never bother to click on the clip and listen to it. Many of those who have listened to it have emailed me or personal messaged me to say that clip proves nothing. It doesn't even match the headlines. Well, there you go. That's why they are called fake news. Of course, it probably hasn't helped matters with the mainstream media that I have been deeply involved with Sheriff Joe Arpaio and Mike Zullo in the Obama fraud criminal investigation. Interestingly, though, that is a true controversial matter in which I have been steeped. Yet not a single thing was mentioned in the Donald Trump Sandy Hook articles about my involvement in that true, factual, criminal investigation. Gee, I wonder why. Also, I have on radio and TV and in print media challenged the mainstream media to produce one piece of hardcore evidence that I ever uttered the words that they claimed I did. To this day, nothing but crickets from the mainstream media. Here's another quick, interesting story. This fake news method of operation has been going on for decades. I remember one time in the late 1970s when I was a deputy sheriff, I was called to a mass disturbance at a government housing project. It eventually required a multitude of officers, even from surrounding counties, to get the situation under control. After it was over, the media interviewed me since I was the first officer on the scene. They asked me, "Officer Gallups, were you scared?" I responded something like, "Well, look, we've been trained to deal with such matters. I did my job. No, I wasn't scared." The headlines of the regional paper the very next day exclaimed these words: "Deputy Sheriff says he was terrified during disturbance." In other words, back in the 70s, they lied and they produced fake news. Yes, fake news has been with us for a long, long time. Today, however, it appears to have been given a shot of steroids. And the takeaway from all of this, be very, very careful what you believe as fact if it is reported in the mainstream media. They are liars and they are not trustworthy. John 8:32, Jesus said this, "If you will abide in my word, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Hey, thanks for letting me rant. May the Lord bless you and keep you always.